Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, for our first topic today, it's all good, all EA, or Electronics Arts. Now, they've been in the news for quite some time, not all so good news, right? And today, it's the same thing, right? And in this case, EA is facing an action lawsuit over their loot boxes scheme. And in this case, Canada, the country, is suing them. So again, it's a never-ending saga with EA, and let's take a closer look into the case that's being filed against them. So as I mentioned, EA is now facing a class action lawsuit in Canada. In particular, the suit argues that loot boxes constitute as gambling. Now, obviously, for quite some time, EA has been faced with the issue of loot boxes for in different countries, and they're contesting that loot boxes does not constitute gambling. And if that were the case, EA is operating an unlicensed gambling business in breach of Canadian Criminal Code, which also argues that EA is liable to the plaintiffs under common law, wherein breach of customer or consumer protection statutes such as the British Columbia Consumer Protection Act by failing to publish the ads of winning prizes and trying to loot boxes to gameplay progression. And because of this, everyone, okay, everyone in Canada who has bought loot boxes since 2008, so that's roughly about 12 years ago, is covered by the suit. Okay, and if you just imagine from 2008 up to the present, they continue to publish more games and they heavily rely on the loot boxes scheme to generate even higher revenues for the company. So with the likes of titles, sports franchises, I think you have FIFA is number one. Then you have the Mass Effect franchise, Need for Speed, Battlefield, Apex Legends, and many more. So they're seeking everything EA made through loot boxes since 2008, as mentioned, in damages. Okay, so if the suit would be successful, it's safe to say that EA would have to pay a whole lot of money. And does EA have a strong case here that what they're doing is considered not technically gambling? And what are the chances of of they succeeding? Now, obviously, the governments haven't caught up with the situation that is loot boxes. A related article, which we'll be discussing in a little bit, has already fined the company for gambling practices, which is loot boxes. Now, in the case of the UK, there's still disagreements of the what constitute gambling here, and until governments can realize or can consolidate what technically gambling is. Obviously, with technology here, with gaming, it's shifting from one form to another. The perception of gambling is typically when you go to a casino, that's where you gamble. Now you can gamble online. Now with games, and with gaming titles such as EA have, it's being expanded to different realms. And what's ironic here is this isn't the first class action lawsuit that EA has faced over the past few years. Now, obviously, there was a lawsuit targeting FIFA's Ultimate Team Code or Team Mode, uh, that was filed in California way back in August. So again, different countries are already seeing the problem, which is loot boxes. Obviously, the main problem for EA here is they're they're pegging their game to be played by everyone, right? Meaning young kids, even adults can play the game. But the tactic of using gambling, or in this case loot boxes, is to entice you know gamers to purchase progression, to buy you know the chances of getting a better player, better specifications in a sense. There was one example that in the case of FIFA, obviously one of the best players right now is Rolandinho, sorry, Ronaldo and as well as Messi, right? So if you were to purchase those packs, what are the chances of you getting those players or their attributes or statistics and so forth, right? And if there's a chance involved with that, already automatically constitutes the chance, rather than just let's say the microtransactions that other games are incorporating into their games, that you pay for a service or a product that you desire. And that's totally different, right? At least you know what you're getting. But with loot boxes, you don't know what you're getting. And it doesn't even indicate how much or how little chance you might be able to get that loot box. And, kids obviously are easily deceived by, let's say, encouraging you to buy more and more and more packs. And eventually, obviously, they don't have the money. They would use the money that their parents have. And there were some reports they have cashed out the savings of their parents so that they could, play those games. And, obviously, gambling is not suited for kids because they don't know right from wrong, especially at a very young, tender age. And as mentioned, so it's not just in California where they're being sued, now in Canada. And on a related story, EI is also fined over loot boxes in the Dutch court. So look here. So as mentioned, EA was fined as much as 10 million. So meaning the government in Dutch has already confirmed that loot boxes is considered gambling, a form of gambling here. So, and according to the Netherlands District Court, that they have ruled against Electronic Arts, as mentioned, that FIFA loot boxes is considered gambling. And if that's the case, the Netherlands Gambling Authority or the KSA can proceed fining such publisher or the publisher as much as 10 million for violating the country's Betting and Gaming Act. Now, obviously, until such time that governments do recognize that, you know, loot boxes is indeed gambling in different form, right? There may not be a physical, let's say, like a slot machine where you pull the lever and you might win a jackpot prize, or gambling with cards or with other forms of what's common in casinos and so forth. But with technology, with games, obviously it has evolved significantly. Now what happens here is obviously the government in this case, or the KSA, believes that it is crucial to shield vulnerable groups, and that's keyword here, vulnerable people such as minors from exposure to gambling. It's one thing if you're targeting adult people here to generate revenue, which they already know, but in this case, the game was geared towards the kids, right? And either they change their policy regarding loot boxes, or they change the rating, which is a totally different discussion altogether. Now, whose fault is this? Is it just the fault of EA being greedy here? How about the FIFA for licensing the game and saying nothing about it? If they were, to be put in that situation that fans are obviously clamoring to play the games, but at what expense, right? Obviously, football is a very popular game worldwide. And as mentioned, for that reason, KSA supports the strict separation between gambling and gaming. And I think EA what they're trying to do is integrate the two, right? And it's not suited for kids. That's why it's important for government agencies to protect the interests of the minors here. And obviously, EA is arguing that FIFA loot boxes would not count as gambling, and the Ultimate Team packs don't offer items of value because they cannot be directly converted to money. But the point here is gambling is trying to win. In this case, you want to improve your performance in the game by buying packs, and in order to get those improvements, it's by chance, not necessarily getting, let's say you want to get Messi there, you purchase it at a certain amount, then you get rewarded. No, it's by chance again. And as mentioned, the court was unswayed by those arguments, noting that there are ways for people to profit from Ultimate Team cards, which cost around 2,000 euros. That's a lot of money. And then people can ignore proper FIFA gameplay Okay, so they're not focused now on the gameplay itself of soccer, but focus more on creating team packs so that they could improve their chances of winning, or obviously, who doesn't want to win the game here. And what's interesting here that EA is always trying to sway the opinion, but they don't have any scientific proof that indeed loot boxes is not considered gaming, right? And we'll see how it goes, but it doesn't bode well for EA as time passes by. Slowly but surely, governments, countries are seeing for what it is, and at such a point that they do change their business model, it will have a tremendous effect in their bottom line sooner rather than later. Anyway, so speaking of, that's the problem with big tech companies, right? Or in this case, EA, that gain so much power, grow too big. It's difficult to, who watches those big companies, right? And in this case, I think, we're talking about it last week regarding the tech giants, who watches them. Well, in this case, the EU, or the European Union, is, providing a tougher look in terms of, what should be, how can they watch over those big companies, right? So let's see here. There you go. So tech giants will have to do more to weed out illegal and harmful content. And then the second part is, while gatekeepers will be bound by a list of do's and don'ts under new rules aiming at reining in their power. So obviously, the tech giants that we're talking about, this pertains to Amazon, Google, Apple, and I don't know, who am I forgetting here? It's all about the antitrust, anti-fair competitive advantage that they leverage themselves, right? So according to the European Competition Commissioner, Margaret Vestager, they proposed new powers for enforcers to target market failures in the digital market. So to stop ones from emerging. So which is pertaining to the Digital Service Act. Where is it? Yeah, the Digital Service Act, where it pertains to online platforms, we have to check sellers. So in this case, we're talking of Amazon here. In our case, hopefully in our country, we can also adopt this. You have Lazada and Shopee, so that they have to check sellers' identities before they can actually use the platform. Obviously, you avoid, encountering illegal and dangerous content. So if you're Facebook, obviously people that post there, they should be regulating those illegal and not just censoring content like YouTube and other platforms and so forth. So it's not just that. Tech companies will also have to produce reports on their actions and inform users who pay for their advertisement. And the key point here is transparency. And I think that's important for in many situations, that, it's not just, you know, are you allowed to advertise? Yes, you could do that, but you also have to inform your customers, or in this case, who patronizes your platform, and, let them see how it is being done. Transparency is always critical to, to a better product and service here. Then the second part is the Digital Marketers Act. So it's targeted, on the other hand, for the online gatekeepers. Okay. So who watches those tech companies, as mentioned earlier? So their role would be to discuss, or actually there are two pillars. The first pillar would be to create a list of do's and don'ts for big digital gatekeepers based on experience with sorts of behavior that can stop market working well. And then the second pillar here would pertain to setting up a harmonized market investigation framework across the 27 country block. So that's a significant, proposal that, if it pushed through, would have a dramatical change in their landscape, moving forward, especially for EU. And if it's a blueprint that, other nations could adopt, especially in the United States and even in Asia as well. So, and as mentioned here, this would give a harmonized set of rules that would allow them to investigate certain structural problems within the digital market, and if necessary, could take action to make those markets contestable and competitive. And at the end of the day, competitive rules is always it's always good, right? Rather than have a monopoly in the market here, and we'll see how it goes. Next here we see here that company Gap, if you're familiar, that sells Gap shirts and different apparels, are shuttering or closing their 350 stores by 2024. So what happened there? Why are they closing their stores? Now they've been in the business for decades, right? They're a fixture in shopping malls and around the country. And according to the article, according to ABC News, as you can clearly see here, that it will be closing 220 stores of Gap stores. Roughly, that's one third of its base stores, right? By end of 2024, and you know they're also closing 130 stores of its Banana Republic stores in North America within the next 3 years. Now, obviously, the trend or preference of customers or people have shifted from brick and mortar concepts to purchasing products online, right? So obviously, price is a main deterrence now for customers who are very price conscious, especially with the pandemic that's going on. You want to be careful with what you purchase. Is it necessary and things of that nature? So what they're trying to do here is to reinvent themselves, and obviously the shift of customer preferences is a key factor. And according to experts, as mentioned, is that the trend will be somewhat permanent, which is, I think that's a reality, right? Adjusting from one form to another, and could be a mix of both already. That it's not going to be easy transition of going back to brick and mortar. It will take some time, but for the meantime, the online shopping experience is king right now. And right now, I think they're going to shift their focus even further to their low-priced thriving stores, such as Old Navy and Athleta stores. So with an annual sales of 8 billion from last year, so meaning it's generating them a significant amount, which is compared to their forecast to grow by as much as 10 billion by 2024. And they plan to open 30 to 44 more stores in the next few years. And Old Navy now has roughly about 1,200 stores. On the other hand, Athleta, which sells activewear, is forecast to double their revenue to 2 billion. And it has about 200 stores across the United States. So, obviously some markets will suffer, but there's always opportunity for other markets here. So low affordable products will be sought after by the mass consumption or the masses here. Continuing, so speaking of technology, Tesla is in trouble, right? For quite some time, tech stocks, Tesla stocks have been growing at an exponential rate, right? But right now they are having problems with their production. In particular, there's a recall for their Model S and Model X cars in China. Roughly about 30,000 here. So let's see. Yes, so Tesla is recalling, as mentioned, 30,000 vehicles in China because of suspension problems. So the company is recalling imported Model S and Model X between September 2013 all the way to January 2018. So roughly that's about 5 years of product that is already in the market. Now the recall is because of two different suspension defects, which is kind of alarming if you think about it. So is it the product itself, the suspension, the problem, or the assembly itself is the issue here? But they did not mention here in the article, but it's alarming because there are only a few giga Tesla factory in the world right now. I think one is in California, as mentioned. The other one is in China. I think they one have in Europe, and they plan to open more, right? So key question here is how would this affect Tesla in the long run? Will this be a minor hiccup? But 30,000 vehicles is considered a lot, right? I mean, they have to shoulder the expenses, replace all those defective parts, and hopefully none of those are affected in other regions, in other markets as well. And what's interesting here, this doesn't include any vehicles that was made in China. So meaning all of those that were in the market in China right now were exported. Imported to China. Okay. So we'll see here. And obviously, Tesla did not immediately reply to the request of comments here. Anyway, so continuing with technology here. So we've been talking about Tesla. Now it's about AMD. Now, for those who are not familiar who AMD is, it's Advanced Micro Devices, also known as AMD. They have now acquired their Xilinx. I don't know how to pronounce their company name, so that they can compete with the likes of Intel. Obviously, AMD and Intel are major competitors in the semiconductor industry, in particular in the chip making, producing desktops and laptops and of such. And obviously, why did AMD purchase such companies or ceilings in this case? What's their main reason here? Obviously, the purpose here is to acquire the data center market. Now, what's a data center market? Now, obviously, it builds on their chip companies' outsourcing manufacturing capabilities. Obviously, it introduced an element of risk because AMD and Xilinx rely heavily, on Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing, which is ESMC for their fabrication needs. Now, the key point here is AMD is, creeping closer and closer to Intel. Actually, they're already overtaking them in different aspects, in particular in their processing chip. They're already producing 7 nanometers compared to 40 nanometers of Intel. So they're lagging behind in terms of innovation. And obviously with the driving of internet's future. And I think that's one of the key reasons here why they acquired the company, because of the fast growing data center businesses with the likes of, let's say, fast information, real-time information that is needed for consumers, with the likes of, let's say, Google. You also have Amazon. You also have what else? Uh, Different platforms like Twitter, or you need real-time information. The faster the information, you need big data centers to handle those chunks of data here. And obviously, it fuels the internet-based services and application. And AMD is, chipping in slowly but surely with to compete with the likes of Intel here. And it's not just that. Obviously, you can see that AMD has already made significant inroads, not just in the chip making, but also in the gaming aspect. If you notice, the upcoming release of Sony PlayStation 5 as well as the Microsoft Xbox Series S or X, they're both using AMD chips there, or graphics card there. So Intel, where are you now? And they're already making inroads to overtake Intel as the number one preferred, or chip maker in the world right now. And if Intel doesn't do anything about it, they will be left behind, right? Anyway, so we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, this is good for consumers. Obviously, AMD has done a lot of inroads to improve their products and services, and obviously, Intel has done little to obey the concerns, or the competition, which is AMD here. Next we have here is in terms of traveling, right? Obviously, businesses have started to open again, and then countries has reopened their borders. And one of the main problems here is how can people travel again safely? And according to one of the article here, lack of common travel protocols could cost the world trillions of dollars, according to the Dubai airport CEO. Well, let's take a look here. So as mentioned, countries have not yet agreed on quarantine and testing, as well as traveling protocols, making it harder for people, those that want to travel, right? So take a look here. Right. So if you can see here that this could cost the global economy trillions of dollars, right? And according to Paul Griffiths of Dubai Airports. And governments were not focused on the economic and social benefits of managing the virus in a very practical way. Now, obviously, the primary concerns of Okay, and we're back. So we were just talking about, so we've recently discussed about the status of the gig economy in California. Now, the court has already decided regarding employees should be reclassified or classified as regular employees who are working under Uber or Lyft or so-called gig economy here. Now, does this spell doom and gloom for those people working in the industry? Let's take a closer look. So obviously, companies, or in this case, Uber and Lyft, have to reclassify all their drivers in the state as employees or regular employees at that. So you cannot just say they're just contractual employees anymore. So it's a big burden for them. Now, obviously, the California implemented a law which is called EB5, which is it reclassifies the ride hail, food delivery, and other app-based workers as employees, which they are entitled to benefits such as unemployment insurance and minimum wage. Now, obviously, the companies are trying to dissuade, what do you call this? Dissuade the judge for making this case, but I think the judge is on the side of the employees here, and based on his statement here, the judge has said in the ruling that Uber's and Lyft's misclassification caused irreparable harm to drivers who, as independent contractors, miss out on employee benefits. Remedying those harms are strongly serve the public interest. Obviously, he sees more harm to the employees rather than the benefit of what the companies are pushing here. So obviously, protecting Uber, Lyft, and their shareholders, and all of those who have come to rely on the advantages of online ride sharing services. Now, obviously, this is not yet a one and done deal. If you look at it, that the ruling makes it more urgent than ever if they really want to, repeal or appeal against the AB5. Then the upcoming election would make a stand on this one. So whether to vote yes or no on Proposition 22. And at the end of the day, Uber still have to wait regarding today's ruling, means that if voters don't say yes on Proposition 22, rideshare drivers will be prevented from continuing to work as an independent contractor, putting hundreds of thousands of Californians out of work and likely shutting down ride sharing throughout the much state of California. Now, is this doom and gloom? Obviously, there are two sides to the coin, that you need to protect the interests of the individuals here, the employees, whether they're contractual or full-time employees here. But again, obviously, Uber and Lyft has generated millions and billions of dollars at the expense of paying those employees. But I think they could always find a middle ground here if I were Uber and Lyft, because you're missing out a big chunk, especially if you have to leave the state of California there, right? But so we have to wait and see what happens in the upcoming election here. And now for some local news. Now, obviously, we've been discussing lately regarding the improvements that the government has been doing for some time regarding the connecting of the North and South Luzon Expressway, which is tremendous, the Skyway. And now we have the North Luzon Harbor Link, which is completed, which is tremendous for not just motorists but as well as businesses who rely on the shorter time frame of delivering their goods and services here. So let's see. So we can see here that the recently completed North Luzon Expressway Harbor Link project is proving to be a boon or advantage for the logistics sector. And it caters to around 30,000 vehicles per day. And obviously, the point of creating the link or the harbor link is to make it easier for delivery of goods and services in areas between North all the way to the port of Manila, which is a key part of transporting goods from whether importing or exporting your goods and services here. Obviously, motorists, especially those driving cargo drafts, discovered the efficiency of using the harbor link, and it has cut the travel time from 2 hours to just 20 minutes. So you could just imagine the saving of time and cost involved with this one. So it traverses from from the North Luzon Expressway, as mentioned, going to Karuhatan in Valenzuela City, going to Malabon in Tinajeros, and then going to the Caloocan Interchange in Grace Park, C3 or 5th Avenue, whichever you're familiar, and then go straight to the North Bay Boulevard South in Navoto City, and then go to the going to the harbor. Okay. And then hopefully you can create more projects that would expedite the process for delivering of goods and service, not just for our businesses, but in particular for our hardworking people in the country, especially developing public transportation, trains, subways. All of those would expedite, traveling from one end in Manila to the other end of the Metro Manila. Connecting them would be even tremendous, make it easier, rather than spending hours of traveling just going to work. It's time wasted that we could always avoid. Anyway, finally, for our last story. So here's an interesting story. So I'm sure you've experienced that. You've gone to McDonald's or any fast food stores that you're interested to buy, something, or in this case, a sweet or like a sundae. And then when you go there, it's not readily available. And this was the case that happened with this person. And guess what he did here? Well, obviously, he did something remarkable. I think that's going to revolutionize, moving forward. So let's take a closer look. So the 24-year-old, as I mentioned, is tracking every broken McDonald's ice cream machine in the United States. Meaning, you don't have to go to the, to the store itself and then later find out that, it's not readily available. So you can find out ahead of time. So how does he do that? Okay, so he's a engineer, software engineer at that. Okay, so it gives you information, up-to-date information, so that you can see right away if the product that they're offering is readily available or not. So it's like shopping on Amazon and Grubhub. Like when you buy stuff online, obviously this is more for food, but it has tremendous applications in other, industries as well, not just for food, for retail, for e-commerce, all businesses in particular, because obviously when you want to purchase something, you want it readily available. Rather than waste your time, go to the store and purchase it physically, and then see that it's not readily available, whether the product's not available, it doesn't have the size, and things of that nature, right? So here the engineer, as I mentioned, Rashid Sahid, came up with the app called McBroken. So what he did was he tested it here in Berlin, and he tried to order a McSenday from a touchscreen kiosk, but obviously it was not available. So what he did do is create a mobile app. Now, obviously there was an app already to order online, right? But what he made was he created a bot, or a robot at that, wherein it lets you place order at any McDonald's location. So when you add an item you want in the cart and pay when you're ready. But the difference here is if it's not available in that particular location, you will not be able to purchase it. So it would be graded out like, just like, it's not available in the store, something like that. So it's currently unavailable. So it's making it more convenient for customers, right? And if I were McDonald's, I would pay the software, the person, and he's tested it in the United States, and he has already received 10,000 visitors here. Now, obviously, it's it's not a perfect here because he's the only one doing it, but with improvements, he has already making it works perfect, like he mentions here. And it all started. It was intended to be just a joke, nothing in particular, but obviously with the problem, you come up with a solution. I think McDonald's should buy or purchase the technology behind it. And I think it's not just for the Sunday, but any product in their store could benefit from it. So rather than waste your customers' time, I think better service is tremendous either way. And it's not just limiting to the fast food industry, but in any product that you need, you can sell online. You can already know right away if it's readily available or not, right? And if you're the VP of McDonald's, rather than Sadiq being worried what would happen if they would shut down the operations. I think they should do the opposite and capitalize on it either way, right? Anyway, it's a very interesting topic for me anyway. Anyway, I think that concludes our discussion for today. So thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Talk to you again next time. Same time, same channel. Take care.